Thanks for visiting In Healthy Company with Dr. Tim. And I'm not famous enough to do a TED Talk, so I thought I'd do a Tim Talk today. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this because it's over the years I've been using cognitive behavioral therapy type techniques whenever I'm seeing my patients, my clients, and I've found them extremely helpful. And anybody who's watching this, who's ever seen me, will recognize my diagrams, and even though they're handwritten, hopefully they'll be helpful to you. Anyway, this is my approach to anxiety and depression. Anxiety and depression for me are just like a balloon or a squidgy ball. So anxiety, depression, one side. If one's more than the other one goes up. If one starts to go down, the other one goes down. So if we're looking at anxiety, which is actually the easier one to be mechanical about, the easier one to be methodical and say, okay, let's try this to deal with this. If we bring down that anxiety score, that will automatically come down as well. So we can look at anxiety and depression, but at the minute, I'm going to look at the anxiety side of things. Anxiety and depression for me are really, they're part and parcel of the same thing. I remember when I was at university, I used to have lectures from one professor about anxiety and one professor about depression. And really, immediately, I realized that they were part and parcel. Each of them influenced each other, and you couldn't address one without the other. So hopefully as we go along, you'll see that. But I'd like to just concentrate on the anxiety side for a minute so that you can get a picture of how you can visualize the physiological effects and visualize the social effects, the psychological effects of any anxiety. So I'd like to just give you my cup of tea example now about anxiety. So in life, we've got a cup of tea. We're stirring the cup of tea with each piece of anxiety, each piece of upset, each piece of anger, each piece of fear. And each time, whether it's a big one or a little one, they're all contributing. They're all adding some adrenaline. They're adding some cortisol to the system. And they really get that system going so that you've got a vicious circle going on, and a true vicious circle. So if we take the teaspoons and take the teaspoons out of the cup, we've still got, if we had a measuring instrument here, we've still got a flow going round. And I think that it's sometimes worthwhile looking at how we would deal with that aspect. We'll talk about this side as well, about how to prevent the problems. But when the problems are going, it's worth looking at this as well. And this is what I sometimes talk to people about whenever they're saying, yeah, but there's nothing I can do about this. I'm always a worrier, or I've always been a worrier, or yeah, you would say you could do that, but not with my life. Well, actually, anyone can address this side of the stress circle just with some simple techniques. So we'll come back to that in a minute. So on this side of the vicious circle, if we're looking at the issues that have been creating it, we can look at each of them and see how we would deal with them. So if we've got something in that vicious circle that's a simple, something that's winding you up, something that's making you unsettled, maybe it's a bill that you keep forgetting to pay, or something that just needs to get sorted out, go ahead and sort that out. Just remove it from the equation. Make a list of those sorts of things so that they just diminish the power of this vicious circle a little. Just so that they take the edge off that. In all these things that I'm talking about, take from it whatever helps you. But I can guarantee you that physiologically it works, because taking that little bit away takes a little bit of adrenaline out of that vicious circle. It takes a little bit of that teacup out. So we deal with that issue, get that one, that stops, that's no longer part of the equation. Then we've got issues here that we maybe can't change. We've got somebody who's died, we've got something awful that's happened. We can't change anything up to here, we can't change anything in the event itself, but we can change the way that makes us feel. So if we think, right, okay, someone's died, I'm not saying someone's died, be happy about it. I'm saying someone's died, let's change that now from being tortured every minute of the day to just being sad. And I mean just being sad. I know we put inverted commas around that. And for everyone, this will all be very different. But it's called cognitive restructuring. We change the way the thing is making us feel, even if it's just a little. So change it from torture to real sadness. Change it from sadness to just feeling sad that it's no longer, the person's no longer there. But don't forget also that with time, you should be thinking about the good bits about back there. So just reflect on the good bits of the person. And I often say, if someone's had a distressing loss, the distress is in this time here. As time goes on, please try and look at some of the good bits. Anyway, I think you've got that concept. And this stressor here is something that maybe we can't change at the minute. So I always give the example of a mole in the back of my hand. There is one actually. Mole in the back of my hand that I go to the doctors with, and I've scratched it, and I'd say, "Is that cancerous, Tim? You know, do you think that's a dodgy one?" And I look at it and I say, "Look, you've scratched it. It's inflamed. Go away. Come back to me in 6 weeks when it'll have healed." And I'm pretty sure that it's not a problem. But come back to me in 6 weeks' time. Don't come back to me at 2 weeks, because it's still going to be inflamed. It's still going to be, and even if we sent you to a specialist, they wouldn't see you. They would take a biopsy and it would just show inflammation. So leave that for the 6 weeks. And in that 6 weeks, don't worry about it. I'm 99.9% sure that it's not a problem. So trust me. Don't trust me, I'm a doctor, but just trust me on this example. So trust me over these 6 weeks that you shouldn't be worrying about it. I don't mind the night before you come to me in the surgery thinking, I wonder, is that cancer? What will Tim think tomorrow? But apart from that, for the 5 weeks and 6 days, don't torture yourself. At that stage, you make a decision on what you do about it. So also say if you've got, in the same situation, you've got same example, you've got a family rift and you're trying to heal that rift. If all that time is just being thrown back at you, or you just can't break through whatever the issue is, revisit it in 6 weeks. But between now and then, don't torture yourself every day about it. So all of these things are trying to decrease the amount of adrenaline going into the system, decrease the amount of fuel going into the stress bucket, into the stress carburetor. And stress kicks off adrenaline. So the adrenal glands, so your brain thinks it through, sends a message to just above your kidneys, the adrenal glands, the adrenaline's the fight or flight hormone. And there's also cortisol. So you got the stress hormones and the stress, the adrenaline. So we'll be talking about this later, about the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, which is the primitive nervous system that just fires off these reactions and fires off these knee-jerk reactions to stress. So moving on from our vicious circle and the issues that we've been dealing with in whatever way we dealt with them to try and stop the release of the adrenaline, we now start to think about the other side of this equation and thinking about what we can do about minimizing the impact of the adrenaline. So think all the time about, rather than this just being a diagram, it is real. You know, it is adrenaline, it is cortisol. So on this side, exercise. So exercise for me, and I know some people will be listening to this because they've got physical disability or some disability that stops them being able to exercise properly. But just look at the concept. There'll be some aspects of this exercise that will help. So exercise for me is like a triple or a quadruple or quintuple whammy against stress. So you can envisage that, you know, exercising will burn up some adrenaline. It'll make you feel better because you're doing it. There might be the social aspect of doing some sport with someone else. So there's 3. There's also the generally, you know, the endorphins that are released. So that's in the happy side. And then stretching out, and we'll come on to talking about stretching in a minute. But stretching out and loosening up is part of exercise and just making your body feel more relaxed than it actually is. So if we're looking at this side, we've got, I'm going to try and draw a brain here, but every time I do it, it comes out more like Montgomery Burns from the, it's not the best brain. Yeah, there's my Montgomery Burns bit. But anyway, you got the midbrain, the midbrain that controls your bowels, your waterworks, all that sort of stuff. You get your ears, your eyes, they're sending signals in, and you're making sense of the environment. If we then look at what the adrenaline's doing to our body, we've got our body's uptight, our neck might be uptight, And that's another signal that comes into this midbrain and makes us feel more upset, makes us feel more intimidated, more on the alert, more on the vicious circle. And it sends signals down to the adrenal gland, and we get even more adrenaline coming in, making you more uptight. So let's try and break that vicious circle by some simple mechanical techniques, some simple just stretching out and loosening up, literally just loosening your body up. Nothing dramatic, no magical relaxation, just simple muscular stretching. That actually makes your body feel more relaxed. It makes your body think it's more relaxed. And actually it's what I call positive negative feedback. It's good negative feedback to your system to actually slow down. All of these techniques, every one of them, we're trying to just reduce the power of that vicious circle by 0.2% each time. So all of these things help. So stretching out and loosening up, that's why I say an exercise, stretching, and whether you're exercising during the day or simply at your desk and just loosening up and stretching out, that helps. So that's my number one. My number two is relaxation. We go back to a nice clean bit of paper rather than my usual scrappy bits. And I know my wife Jackie will be saying, if you hadn't kept going with that scrappy bit, people would understand a bit more. Anyway, so exercise is my number one go-to, and that's the one that's my triple or quadruple whammy against stress. Number two, relaxation. And in that I mean something that you do to relax, going to the cinema, going to watch sport, going to listen to music, some hobby, whatever. So that's form of relaxation, which is a distraction. If you're doing something like that, it's not, I used to give the example that, I don't know whether Horatio's is still down on the Palace Pier in Brighton where I live, but I used to give the example that if you used to enjoy singing in karaoke, go and do it. It drags yourself up towards a place that was happiness. If it was just going down onto the pier and throwing basketball, do something that used to make you happy and it drags you towards that happiness. That's sort of relaxation. But then we've got the more conventional or unconventional relaxation. So we've got what I love is mindfulness, and we'll talk about mindfulness in another program. But mindfulness for me, meditation, whatever, we're talking here about having 10 minutes once or twice a day where your job in that time is to do nothing other than thinking about nothing. And again, people will say, yeah, that's easy for you to... I have used this in my life, and I'm sometimes not the calmest person in the world, and I genuinely recommend it to anyone to explore mindfulness. And we'll do a separate mindfulness program where we'll be talking about mindfulness. But that is basically about spending time, 10 minutes, twice a day, where you get yourself into a relaxed situation, not even necessarily a relaxed state, and if you can, great. But in that time, you're not thinking of anything other than thinking about nothing. And a day like that, rather than the ups and downs of a day of stress, if you've got a day where you've got 2 blocks in there, the ups and downs will come, and then there'll be a quiet time, and it'll take a little longer to get back up to the ups and downs, and the same again. So someone who's got that level of stress or adrenaline flowing, as opposed to someone who's got that level, will feel slightly more relaxed. The final part in my toolbox, emotional toolbox, is your emotional or mental first aid. So my emotional first aid, and that's deep breath, count to 10, stretch out. All of the 3 things together. A deep breath just slows down that primitive brain. It makes this primitive brain feel that it's more relaxed and stops the speeding breathing. The count to 10 actually gives you time to actually cognitively take in what it is that you're actually worried about, what it is that you're panicking about. By the time you get to 2 or 3, you stop panicking. By the time you get to 7 or 8, you stop worrying. And by the time you get to 9 or 10, you've often sorted it out. So big deep breaths, count to 10, and then going back to my example of the stretching and the loosening up, where in that situation, you're fooling the autonomic nervous system, you're using your cognitive, you're using the more modern, the more functional influencing brain to influence the primitive brain, and that slows things down. So when you're busy at work and there's something that comes up, something really stressful happens, I'm not asking you to go off and have 10 minutes sitting and getting yourself lying down in the first aid room. What we do is we use our emotional first aid for that. We use our count to 10, our stretching, and our big deep breath. So this is my general approach to anxiety, and we'll also deal with depression on a further episode. But you can see that bringing this anxiety down, the anxiety with depression, depression with anxiety, if you can just minimize the power of the vicious circle by using some of these techniques, I'm sure that it will make you feel better in general terms. Again, this is simply my draw on this. Take from it what is helpful. If none of it's helpful, you've probably already switched off. But if any of it is helpful, then please use it. And various books on mindfulness, various people's approach to mindfulness, everyone has a slight different approach, and it's worth reading everybody's opinion about it, because no one has the absolute right answer. We're not asking you in this situation to be a Buddhist monk. I'm not telling you that in this mindfulness meditation that you have to become a Buddhist, although Buddhism and the way they approach mindfulness is really worth looking at and adding to your understanding. But I am saying that it is worthy of your attention, worthy all of these areas. If you address them, take a little bit of each of them and do whatever you can to improve your overall mental well-being, I'm sure you'll benefit from it. Thank you for listening to this Tim Talk, and I hope you found some of the information and the techniques useful. As always, if you need help, please reach out to a professional or reach out to friends. And this is more something to give you a little bit of extra help along those ways to deal with things. If you've enjoyed it, please share us with other people. Please subscribe to In Healthy Company and to The Healthy Company. And if there's any areas that you would like me to address, although I can't individually respond, email me at wellbeing@thehealthycompany.com. Again, thank you very much for being with me.